me. And I said, that's news to you, not to me. Why are you standing there? You want a hug? And I said, you've praised me. I could survive for another 20 years on that, no matter what you think, But you don't, mentoring. There's no mentoring party. It's just a silent appreciation that you hope that the people that you've worked with carry it forward. And training is really the most important thing. Education is the only way that we have a chance with anything, because you can teach more people than you can arrest. You can teach more people that you can chase down.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. I became a trainer. I think I got my first instructor certification in 1997. I became a firearms instructor. And I've been an instructor for multiple topics ever since. A lot of the hard skills to start, because that was kind of my shtick when I was a young cop and a SWAT guy. So, firearms instructor, defensive tactics instructor, straight baton, handcuffing, taser, OC, all that stuff. And then as you kind of move along in your career, you start getting into some more of the soft skills and being able to teach guys stuff other than thump them up stuff.
Yeah, and leadership, followership.
And I do enjoy very much teaching that. I like teaching. I think if I ever do anything else after law enforcement, I kind of do some of that already. I work on the side for Penn State's Justice and Safety Institute, and that's like a law enforcement supervisory education branch for Penn State University, and I teach law enforcement supervisory classes for them. So getting out there, I'm an active shooter instructor, and I love going out into the community. We get requests all the time for businesses, medical centers, schools, where I go in and do active shooter training. I've done opioid awareness training, like where you can get out and actually. I love training cops, but that's a whole special group to train. Even teaching cops, it takes a whole kind of different dynamic. But being able to go out into the community, and again, you get that interaction, and you get to impart a little bit of a knowledge, and you get them to understand that, kind of like this show, you understand cops are people too, and we're here to help you out, and I want to teach you, and I want to help you learn things, and that's important to me. And that creates those community connections, and that's really, especially in this day and age, that's what we as the police need to have in order to thrive, is that community relationship. You need to. And again, it sounds awful cliche. It goes back to Sir Robert Peel, but the people are the police and the police are the people. It's a symbiotic relationship, and if you don't nurture that relationship and instructing people in how to make themselves more safe and more secure is a great way to do that, especially kids, which is, I think, really important as well.
Yeah, and it's important to nurture that relationship on both sides, not just the police side and not just the community side. And education works wonders, and it never stops. It never stops giving, and it goes on beyond. That's part of teachers' lessons go on for eternity, they say. And I've always liked teachers, no matter what they're teaching. I love having teachers on the show. I've told them before I feel some guilt because I didn't quite appreciate them at the time, so I'm trying to make up for it a little bit. What's the hardest part of the job?
The hardest part of the job, I think, for me is, there's the standard answer, the nasty stuff you see, the bad things in life. I think at some point you develop the ability, at least I've been able to, where so long as you have a conscious understanding that you can't allow yourself to become cynical. To some extent, cynicism helps us stay safe in our job.
Yeah.
But also, I think understanding that you can't become cynical and there's more to it than that is important.
Well, you can't be cynical. You can't become numb, but you can't be you can't be naive. You can't be an emotional gerbil either, because that'll destroy you too.
So there's all that hardship stuff that you see, but we've all got to deal with that. And again, that comes down to training too, where I think we have to do a much better job with all first responders. And it's starting to finally get in the spotlight, PTSD, stuff like that, how to cope and deal with these things that we used to just say, go shake it off.
Walk it off, right? Drink it off, or whatever, yeah.
But I think now at this point in my career, the hardest part for me right now currently is, I've got cops are people too, and they make mistakes. And And when they screw up, I'm the guy who's got to hold them accountable and make it right. And that's really hard to do, because you got guys that are out there trying to do a really hard job under really tough conditions. And we are held to a very high standard, and somebody's got to hold them accountable at some point. The buck stops here. And at my point in my career, that stops with me now. And so, not a lot of times, it doesn't happen much. But it happens, enough that I have to deal with it multiple times a year, and having to play the bad guy, and just do my job basically. But it's never fun having to go through that with anybody.
Well, and you get a situation where if, when people are meeting people in emergency services, typically the public needs to keep in mind, typically you're meeting that representative of whatever emergency service you're dealing with on what might be the worst day of your life so far. So you got to factor that into, things. And on the other side, you have to factor in, person may say something that normally they wouldn't have said because they're having a really bad day. And I think if we just look at it through that prism, take it a little easier and not think the other one's going to be a robot and flawless, I think we get along better. Technology, how has it changed in your 25 years to influence the job? I mean, when you started, it was It's on Sanskrit, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Press hard, there's duplicate copies. Everything was. The new guys will never know the pain of getting 90% through a 4-page handwritten report and screwing something up and having to go back and start all over again.
Aren't you in a difficult situation? Because you're are you an old young guy or a young old guy? You're right at the precipice.
I'd like to say I'm a young old guy. But yeah, the technology is really, it's definitely, I kind of have to laugh, it's gotten so much easier with the computers. We have MDCs in all of our cars, the mobile computers, and even dispatch. Back when I first started, they had a great big book with all the registration plate information in it. And you would get on the radio and call it in, and somebody would have to flick through the book to find your number in the sequence, and then they'd be able to give you the registration information. And then shortly thereafter, you would have to get on, you would have to call in, and a dispatcher would have to answer and check on that in the computer, and then get back on the radio and talk to you and tell you what you're looking for. And, now it's all at their fingertips. Everything's instantaneous. They can sit and type reports in the car. You're not getting the curled up claw hand from writing a 6-page report out, because you can sit and type it all. And I kind of have to laugh, because it's, you come up with something and you're like, look, we really have to start entering this information on the call. And guys will still turn around and be like, oh, I can't believe this is more work for me now. It's going to take me even longer to get this report done. And it's like, you have no idea what a long time to get a report done is.
I wanted to say that because no matter what we do, when we make it easier, there's always somebody that's tough for them, because it's the toughest they've
ever done. Right?
And that's like when we're doing medical stuff on the search and rescue team, I train people to put people in with webbing. No buckles, nothing. I start with the base level so they can at least say they did it once and appreciate the buckles, appreciate the spider straps, because when you start on just the spider straps or the buckles, they don't know what to do if they don't have it. They don't even have any recollection. And it's like, I'm sure we were talking about crank windows before. I'm sure people don't know what carbon paper is.
We literally used to carry carbon paper in the little clipboards in the car, so if we had to make multiple copies of something out on the street, we'd be able to.
Well, and you'd have this piece of carbon paper that had to make it all day, and you'd spin it around the different sides and try and find a point. And but I don't know. I think the technology makes us potentially more efficient. I don't know if it makes us better overall, because I see sometimes the dependence on it, and when it goes out, we don't know what to do. We're just caught off guard. And I remember years ago when Nextel came out, I loved Nextel. And then the downside of it was people started going around dispatch, and that was the beginning of people going around. There was one central method, and now people were having better ideas and thinking they could go do something else, and dispatch was losing track of us. So we kind of always mutate technology a little bit to our advantage. What do you think makes you good at your job?
I think it's probably a couple things. I'd like to think I got a pretty good personality, and I can be engaging and friendly, and I'm open to understanding different people and different things, and realizing that we're not all the same and everybody's got their problems that they're dealing with every day. And I think really some of the stuff that makes you good at your job is just stuff that it takes time to develop. Once you've got a couple decades under your belt, especially in any of the public safety services, just that sheer experience that you bring to the table, it gives you a confidence. It enhances your ability to make decisions. It increases the likelihood that you might have a positive outcome because you've seen some more things, you've been through some more things, and it makes it a little bit easier to do your job properly. And you still, even with all that being said, you still run into situations every year, every month, whatever it may be, that is something that you just absolutely never seen before. And you're like, wow, this is a new one.
I like those because they make me feel young again. I don't like it when when you see something and other people are shocked and appalled and you're like, I've seen this before. This happens up here. And you're kind of writing it off. And you don't mean to be flippant or dry about it, but it's not a new thing for you. But I like it when I see something where I go, when you're standing with a couple other people, you're going, I've never seen that before. That's new. And there's so much that you see new that's that just people are creative. People are creative, and you can't underestimate their creativity. What do you think? You said in a couple years, because you started young, you can retire, and you would be a young, healthy guy, but you're not going to retire.
Most likely not. No.
But what would you think your legacy would be?
Wow. I'd like to think my legacy would be that I leave behind a bunch of officers that have at least taken one thing positive away from an interaction with me. When I teach a class, whether it's to law enforcement, whether it's to other people, I've guest lectured at colleges and done different things like that. And I always preface it by saying, look, especially in law enforcement, sometimes classes are mandatory. Guys are told they have to go to certain classes, and I say I understand everybody might not want to be here and you might not all take anything out of this and you may think it's the most boring thing in the world. But if you're able to walk away from training with just one thing that you go, you know what, I like that, I'll probably use that or I'll remember that. I think then you've accomplished something as an instructor. Hopefully you can have more than one thing in a class. But I think the same serves as far as a legacy for a career. I hope at one point officers that have worked under me, people that have worked with me, people, citizens and civilians that have encountered me throughout my career, people in the fire and EMS services that have seen me or worked with me. I hope at some point they can look back and something goes on where they either remember something I said or taught them how to do, or they think about, I was in a situation like this before, and Lieutenant Troxel, he handled it really well, and I remember how he did it, so I'm going to do that myself. Or, just if they can take away one thing from me, every single person that I've had that random encounter with, or every officer that I've worked with, can take one thing that they remember about me positive away that they might use, or it might better help them be a better cop, then I think I would like to think that's my legacy, that I've been able to have that effect on the majority of the people I've met.
That's really the best you can hope for when you're not there, that people are remembering something you taught them and using it in a positive light, and that it kind of expands out, through education and everything. But I love remembering stuff about people that taught me. I love it when somebody tells me, hey, I thought about you the other day, and I thought exactly. That's the best thing in the world.
Exactly.
It's the best thing in the world. We'll do a little bit of after show. Thank you for coming.
Oh, it was my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay.